This meeting is being recorded.
All right. My name is Megan. I'm here on Mind the Divide, and today my speaker is Christina Fusco with the City of Saratoga. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for taking time out of your day to answer some questions.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you could give a little bit of background on how you got into the City of Saratoga and how you do your job on a daily basis so well, because City of Saratoga is a pretty well-established WUI and urban forest zone that has some great policies in place.
So I started off, I have my bachelor's in environmental science with an emphasis in watershed hydrology. And I started off doing utility vegetation management for PG&E, where I, learned my species and growth rates because that's very important to them.
Yes.
And I worked for the city of San Jose for a while, managing special districts, tree programs. And then I came to Saratoga. And I have to say the community support, the support from my staff, from my city manager is amazing in Saratoga. And there really is this huge sense of community for such a large city, really. I mean, we're small in the Bay Area, but, we have a pretty, huge population and a diverse population to have such a good sense of community. And I feel very, very lucky to have landed in Saratoga.
Yeah, it's always nice when the community can rally behind a resource and really understand its full scope of benefits. Yeah. And they can buy into working together to maintain that.
Yeah.
So one of my questions that I was wanting to use from the City of Saratoga as guidance for other communities that are getting started on developing a more in-depth urban forest or better policies and ordinances for the urban forests or WUI forests is the tree protection plan. And, projects that you need a tree protection plan for. Can you explain what a good tree protection plan should have and why it should be used or when it should be used?
So a tree protection plan in Saratoga is for any project that is going to be impacting the trees, protected trees on the property, one or more. And the distinguishing factor that needs a tree protection plan is whether tree protection fencing will be required. So how much, does the root zone of protected trees need to be protected during this project? So I make that determination. There's a tree permit for smaller projects that are doing, say, trenching to a fire pit or something small like that, which wouldn't necessarily require tree fencing, and I can manage their tree protection by myself. For a tree protection plan, an arborist review, the applicant would need to hire their own arborist to be their project arborist. I don't have time to do all the inspections. And we have a 4-page checklist of things that need to be included in the report. But the most important things for this is really defining the health of the trees that are on site and how large is the critical root zone of these trees, what needs to be protected, and then how do we protect that area. One of the things we run into is people thinking that if they've protected the trunk, then the entirety of the tree is safe. And that's not necessarily true, that critical root zone. And it's in our code to follow the ANSI construction management plan. So it's really pretty cut and dry. We're not making things up as far as what needs to be protected. So that's really the critical part of the tree protection plan.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, having consistent guidelines where everybody can get behind the same concepts is, I think, one of the more important features to making sure that your city, your workers, your construction, your maintenance crews, everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, and the tree protection plan is required to be printed in the final plan set for any construction project. So they have it right there. And the critical components of the tree protection plan are actually on the site plan itself. So it's not its own page that gets lost.
Good.
On the site plan.
I've seen that happen, so that's good. As the state and local regulations adjust and our climate continues to change, our fire hazards increase. How does tree removal qualifications fit in?
So we have in Saratoga, you can't remove a protected tree unless it meets one of the qualifications for removal. We currently have 13 of those. And so we've added 2 just last year, which include a tree removal is necessary for the creation of defensible space. There are several requirements that someone needs to meet before they can remove a tree for this reason. We have people who want to remove a tree for fire safety, but they're not actually fireproofing their property. They just want to increase their view or something like that.
Right.
So they are required to do several of the things on their checklist. I'll back up a little bit. A home ignition zone inspection is required for the removal of a tree for fire safety, unless it's blatantly obvious that it's an issue.
Sure.
So they'll get a checklist from I'll back up again. The City of Saratoga partners with the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council, and they are an integral part of our fire prevention in Saratoga. We partnered with them in 2013 when the City of Saratoga did a safety element with the fire safety in the WUI section, and I can send you that if you'd like to look at that. It was revised in 2018. It was made into the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which is just a huge checklist of things the city wants to do and a timeline for when it should be done, which you'll probably actually like that also. I can send you our wildfire plan.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. So since 2013, we've partnered with Santa Clara Fire Safe Council. They have done some great things in our community. They have FireWise communities. So I'm getting off topic, but you can get your whole community together, reach out to Fire Safe Council, get certified as a FireWise community, and that can actually help you get fire insurance, and it can help you reduce your fire insurance fee. So I know a lot of people are really worried about keeping their fire insurance for these days.
Yeah, and they also work with CAL FIRE chiefs in whatever local area you're at to do some of those inspections and draw up a plan of, hey, this is what this community needs to work on in order to be safer for CAL FIRE to come in and do our job.
Yeah, they're a nonprofit. They work directly with Santa Clara County Fire, our Fire Safe Council does.
Nice.
They do free chipping. We work together with the city to do a dead tree rebate program. So the city funds Fire Safe Council to award homeowners $500 per tree to just offset the cost of removing some of these dead trees for the homeowners. Great program, a lot of interest in it from our community, trying to get
fantastic.
Reduce our fuel. But back to our removal criteria. Sorry, I got off topic a little bit.
That is okay. All pertinent information.
We've added the 2 removal criteria. So you can remove a tree for the creation of defensible space. If it fits in with your home ignition zone checklist, and if it cannot be maintained through maintenance. So I don't always agree with the home ignition zone inspection if something can be done through maintenance, but I have met with their inspectors several times, and I think we're totally on the same page now as far as what maintenance can be done and what removals need to happen. So, and the reason I bring that up is they have an arborist on staff now, but they haven't. So we really need to have a frank discussion for a tree. Say a tree is overhanging a building.
Sure.
And Fire Safe says, I want all of this overhang removed. If you're going to be removing 50% of a tree, you don't want to leave a stressed tree next to a structure. You're not getting your goal. You're not making your home more safe by leaving half of a stressed tree next to your structure when a whole healthy tree would have been better. So does the tree need to be removed? Maybe. Or does the tree need to be trimmed? So actually we worked side by side. Dusty was their last fire safe inspector, but he's moved on to another project. I haven't met their new one yet. But meeting them on site, discussing the property, what needs to happen to make this property fire safe. Excellent program. And that's that criteria. It ends up being more complicated than it probably should be, but trying to make sure that the trees that are on site have a high water content and are safe.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other one is we have just recently have a nuisance tree list, which is very new to Saratoga, just happened last year. And that is Monterey pines and blue gum eucalyptus, because unmaintained blue gum eucalyptus have a huge amount of litter and not everyone can keep up with that maintenance.
Yeah, and several other cities, towns, counties have entire either regulations or incentives to just take out everything that is a eucalyptus because nobody wants to keep maintaining them and replace it with something that's a little bit easier to maintain across the entire, city, county, or town. So it sounds like you're giving homeowners the option to either step up their maintenance or take it out and replace it.
Yeah, and we won't require any removals there. It's completely up to the homeowner whether they can maintain that in a safe manner or not. And the other tree that we put on there is the Pinus radiata, the Monterey pine, because of the bark beetle in our area. It's once they hit a little bit of stress, they just decline, and so they have I was just saying the low water content in the Monterey pines is a real issue.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 trees that are on our nuisance list, and they can be removed in the WUI. No permit fee, no notification of neighbors. It goes straight out.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that's definitely moving in the right direction, facing some of the changes that we've had with our climate, previous unfounded choices on what to plant and where to plant it. There are, I want to say 300 species of eucalyptus, and not all of them are fire hazards. Not all of them are huge problems. Not all of them are really tall, large species that drop branches on a constant basis.
Yeah, but that's not a handful that grow here. But they're.
So saying all eucalyptus is not good isn't appropriate, but really making the appropriate selection for what species you're using, and that goes across the board with any tree. You need to plant a species that is correct for your area and your utility lines and your yard, wherever you're putting it. Do you ever give any guidance to what to put in an area? Make any recommendations for someone?
Absolutely. It's completely site dependent, like you were just saying. I've been back and forth on whether or not to make a City of Saratoga tree list, because not all trees are good in all locations. You should not put a monkey puzzle tree in your front yard over the sidewalk. Maybe that's a bad idea.
Right.
But I would definitely put it on the list because it's an awesome tree in some location.
Sure.
And then, obviously people in Saratoga love their oak trees. Absolutely in love with their oak trees. And I love that. It's one of the amazing parts about working in Saratoga.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we have gone back and forth with this project as well. Is, do we create a species list for what to recommend? Because we're looking at all of California, and that's just not realistic. From Northern California into the mountain ranges to Southern California, you cannot possibly use the same list. Do you make a list per zone? Do you make a list per city or town or county? Or do you negate lists and you only do recommendations of what not to put in? And then give criteria of, hey, if you are doing something with your yard has power lines running, over that section, you have utility lines under your front yard or over your front yard, either way. Make sure you're picking a species that doesn't grow above this height, and give parameters, but not species specific.
Parameters, yeah. And I recommend people, if they really want to look at some trees, to go to Select Tree. It's
that's
a favorite for people. Yeah, for just anyone can use it. Just put your sunset zone in, what you're looking for, and you get a populated list. I wish they should really flag invasives. It always starts off with acacia because it grows anywhere.
Yes.
But Select Tree is an excellent list to go off of. When someone asks, I ask a few questions about their site, and I usually try to give them an evergreen, a deciduous, and a showy flower that would fit in that spot.
Yeah. Always, that's good criteria.
Yeah. So you can pick one of the 3, and they're usually pretty happy.
Could you talk about some of the policies and procedures that Saratoga has to I would say the maintenance for the forest, either urban or WUI, and what is it that you guys do having a 50-50 ratio of WUI, and how do you manage that WUI area? Do you have any maintenance requirements or staff that do any maintenance? And then do you have any urban forest maintenance and requirements that might be beneficial but different than the WUI?
So we have requirements in the WUI. We don't necessarily have requirements outside of the WUI as much.
Okay.
We still have our weed and brush abatement. Your site can't be completely unmaintained with waist high weeds and flammable material like that. But in the WUI, there actually are requirements to follow the defensible space guidelines. That's handled more by code enforcement, so I can't speak too much to how that's implemented.
Sure. Yeah, the state has their requirements.
Yeah, but definitely the weed and the brush abatement is a huge part of that fire safety, and that is handled by code enforcement.
Okay.
They have to get it clean if it's a fire hazard of that level. But as far as like basic tree maintenance, we don't have a requirement for basic tree maintenance. We have some limitations on who can do it. If someone is having their tree maintained, even if they don't require a permit, they are required to have an ISA certified arborist on staff supervising the work. And that kind of goes to what I was saying earlier, is if you're pruning a tree in a way that's not in line with the ANSI 300s, you're going to have a tree that's stressed. You're probably going to end up with a tree with low water holding capacity, or I'm sorry, low moisture content.
Yep.
And you're not meeting your objective.
You end up having unhealthy lean. Saratoga doesn't get a ton of crazy storms, but you do get some good wind throw on occasion. And depending on where that tree is located, you may have caused an issue for your neighbor because you took all the branches off of your side of that tree. And then you have an eyesore on top of it. So
we have a little bit of I don't even want to say it's an issue, but we do have we have some residents who get really scared if a tree gets too tall. So we have some residents who will hire someone to, cut their tree in half. And it's not, it's sad because they didn't meet their objective. Their tree is not safer. Yeah. And now they have to go and, remedy that by structural pruning to restore, which takes a long time.
Yeah, realistically, I feel like, being ISA certified myself, I have not come across any ISA certified arborists who agree with topping trees. I know it's a common practice when you're dealing with utility lines, and realistically, the consensus that I have come to, having discussions with numerous arborists, is at that point you need to just take the tree out and it needs to be replaced with a shorter species. If that's your main concern and height scares you, as a homeowner, you need to, figure out a way to properly deal with, how can I feel more safe? How can I replace this tree rather than butcher this tree? And what does that look like? Do I need to put in 2 trees, 3 trees to make the equivalent for the one that I took out? Do I have space for that? What species should I select? If this one doesn't work for me, what can I put in? It takes a little bit of thought, but if you take the time and you work with someone like yourself and an ISA certified arborist to make those choices, I don't know too many companies with an ISA certified arborist that's going to top a tree for you, because they understand that tree is going to give out and die or grow improperly in the future. And then you've cut that tree's life expectancy in half almost. So
it depends on the severity of the topping, absolutely, and the species. But so if someone has a code violation for topping a tree, any pruning that's not in line with ANSI standards is a code violation in Saratoga. Yeah. And so I'll work with the homeowner, like, what is the best action forward? Like, does the severity of the topping does that mean the tree needs to come out, or does that mean we need to work together over the next 5 years with your arborist to restore the canopy? What
Sure.
is our path forward? If they do need to remove the tree because of topping, they have to plant trees equal to the value of the tree before it was topped. So I would do that appraisal, and they would be required to plant that many trees.
And if they happen to have a smaller lot, or maybe they already have lots of other trees in the rest of their lot, and maybe they can't fit all of the trees that they need to meet that standard, because I know that that is an issue in more densely packed urban areas like San Jose. Do you have the option for them to contribute? Maybe they can only fit 2 out of 3 on their property. That third one, do you have an alternative location outside of their property where it could go?
Yes, we do. The City of Saratoga has something we call the tree fund. They
Awesome.
would pay an in lieu fee into the tree fund, and that money is spent only on planting and maintaining, planting and establishing trees in Saratoga.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and so that is for exactly what you're saying. If there's a code violation, they can't fit the required trees, then those trees will be planted somewhere in the city. But really the preference is for those trees to be planted in the same neighborhood where the tree was removed.
Sure, yeah.
So they have to qualify for the tree fund. They really do need to put the tree on their property if possible.
Yeah.
And, they can plant larger trees. They can plant smaller trees. I used to encourage an understory, but now we don't really encourage an understory anymore in the WUI.
Now the ladder fuels.
Reducing ladder fuels, so we can't do that anymore. Which I think looks nice, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's frowned upon now. So
that brings me to my next question. Could you talk about some of the policies and procedures Saratoga has in place that are beneficial to maintaining the WUI and incorporate fire safety while maintaining that healthy tree canopy?
So a lot of it is our partnership with our fire, with Fire Safe Council, Santa Clara County Fire. They approve all projects go through fire for new construction. So they have to approve, although they don't necessarily have their landscaping plan on their plan set for fire to approve. So I was looking at that before this meeting, and if they're not required to have landscaping, because backyard landscaping is not always required, so it's not in the plan set, even though they may be putting in it, does not get reviewed. Another code change we had last year when they added the code changes to the removal criteria is that new construction in the WUI cannot have any flammable materials within 5 feet of the structure. So Correct. They need to figure out something different. I think even tree mulch, I think mulch is even included in that flammable material.
Yeah, it's now aiming towards more pea gravel and DG and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so getting the flammable material away from the structure is one of the main things. I do worry about our canopy cover when it comes to new construction. The homes that they're building are quite large. We don't hardly see anything under 6,000 square feet, which means a lot of canopy covers coming out to put that home in, especially when the defensible space requirements require no canopy cover above the home as well. So we're ending up with a big, pretty substantial area of open canopy when a new home goes in. I don't really see a way around that. We're maintaining our canopy in the front and back and side yards because any tree removed requires a replacement tree planted. For the most part, people are able to accommodate the trees on their property. The in lieu fee is not very common. It's mostly used for people who have code violations. People who are planting new construction have a lot of desire to put in trees. We accept fruit trees, which are very popular for smaller trees going in with new homes. A lot of people want to put in a screen, so a lot of podocarpus is going in, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Would you have any recommendations for where we could insert more trees in already developed urban areas?
Yeah, one of my wish lists is to have a tree requirement for a front yard tree. I think a tree-lined street is has so many benefits to the community. Between you know, there's just a huge list of benefits between lowered crime, less speeding, more walking. So if there were a requirement to have a tree planted in every front yard, I think that would go so far into increasing the canopy coverage in places where there isn't a lot of canopy coverage. You know, one tree planted, you know, amongst other trees adds a little bit of canopy, but one tree planted in a vacant area adds 100% of its canopy. Makes a huge difference. And that would be something that I would like to see in the code.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I've seen some neighborhoods that do that, and it definitely increases the value of that neighborhood. And the shade on a hot day is just unrivaled.
The walkability is completely changed.
Yeah. I would say you definitely see more neighbors out, more dog walkers, more strollers. It becomes a little bit more of a community feeling when you give that element to it. Have you dealt with any ordinances from Saratoga or other cities that maybe need updating so that they can be a little bit more applicable to the way our climate is changing, our fire behavior is changing? Or have you seen that we're doing a fairly good job with state ordinances trickling down to try and keep up with that?
We have had a fair amount of ordinances coming down to increase housing that have a little bit of an impact on us, trying to keep our tree coverage, reducing the setbacks for ADUs. I don't know if you've heard anything about that. The ADUs being 4 feet from a property line has resulted in a lot more tree impact because you do tend to see a lot of trees near the property line.
Right.
And so we're really encroaching on that critical root zone. The setbacks tend to protect those trees to a certain extent. So really struggling to fit these ADUs in. They've been very popular. I don't know what the solution is for that. I know there's a housing crisis, so it's just these two conflicting issues.
Right.
So we're doing our best, you know, maybe the ADU needs to go on pier and beam, maybe, you know, but then if you're putting the ADU in the WUI, then you have to clear the homeowner has the right to clear the canopy coverage above it for fire safety. And then you have that loss as well. So I don't have answers. That was just kind of an idea thrown out there that is to work with.
It's definitely something that has come up a lot in different conferences that are discussing WUI and fire management and mitigation and, you know, upcoming how to handle. And ADUs are one of the main talking points for a lot of that because not only do we need them, we have a shortage of housing, but they tend to be placed in a location where you're right next to a wood fence, which is where the fire travels. And they tend to be just close enough to a neighboring structure or a fence and then the main structure to bring those embers to the next piece of, you know, of structure of home. And then how do you fit a tree into all of that? So definitely a future problem that we need to brainstorm and come up with some solutions. I mean, green roofs can only go so far for things like shade, cooling, you know, temperature offsets, but that doesn't really give you canopy cover. So that's a good point that you bring up. I will have to work with others on brainstorming.
The other thing is I worked for a city previously that there was no real, I don't know if things have changed, it's been a long time. There was no real, there were no consequences for not doing the tree protection, for not getting a permit. And so I know the consequences are unpopular. Like in Saratoga, we have such a huge community of people who are so passionate about keeping our city canopy cover intact, that these penalties that that people get when they do treat their trees badly, or have a code violation, and that's supported by the community. So in an area where those penalties are not supported by the community, it's very difficult to get people to follow the ordinances that you're writing. So, but it kind of goes hand in hand, where you can have these ordinances that are great, but if they're not backed up, then they don't really do what you're trying to accomplish.
Sure. Yeah. Incentives, encourage, educate. Something needs to happen in order to get everybody to buy into why we have the policy in place in the first place.
Yeah. Because, if someone's calling the mayor every single time there's a code violation on trees, the mayor's gonna be like, why are we making so many people upset?
Right. Yeah.
Why am I getting these calls? What's wrong? What's happening? So the community buy-in is really important. But I think my point was that your code needs to be pretty solid, and then your penalties for not following the code have to also be there. And that was one of the things that I had an issue with it at a previous place that I worked.
Sure. Yeah. And not all policies, not all punishment for not following the policies fit every area. Like you said, Saratoga really follows the policies and understands the punishment. But if you're attempting to get more trees into a low income neighborhood, and you see that a tree got brought down and that low income neighborhood doesn't have the finances to replace it, penalizing them isn't going to do any good, because they already don't have the money to fix it. So how do we bring about the proper change?
Yeah. So, penalties in Saratoga, if a tree is removed, the penalty is actually not very high, but they are required to replant trees. Say someone removes a tree without a permit, that did not qualify. It was a healthy, good tree. They would need to plant trees on that property equal to the value of the tree that was removed. I think most people find that to be fair. And the community itself is like, well, yes, we lost a tree, but we're getting, it will come back. And the property owner's making it right. So it's not just that they get a penalty. It's not just a fine or something like that. It's replacing that value to the community that was taken away.
Yeah, especially if it seems like you're very hands-on with guiding them through the process. So they're not going to pick a species that doesn't work for their property. And they're also going to be guided on how to get it to be well established, what the water regimen needs to look like, what the pruning regimen in the future needs to look like, and how to get that tree to adulthood and be as healthy as possible, and not just be like, hey, go plant a tree.
Really work with the property owner, especially if it was a removal because the property owner was scared of their tree. Yeah, what can we do to put a tree in that this homeowner is actually going to like and maintain? Because if they, take out a tree that they hated and plant a tree that they hate, they're not going to water it. They're going to be like, oh, it died. So really working with the property owner to understand that trees reach different heights. They can plant a tree that maybe doesn't reach that same height. And, really work with them to see, like, what do you like about a tree? Do you like flowers? Do you like fall color? What about a tree do you like? Let's find a tree that has those qualities.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think the more we can get staff in our towns and cities and counties that care about the job, are well educated on what they need to share and inform the community on, and the more outreach they do, the more the community wants to work with us, and the more the community wants to, okay, you're not being unreasonable, and it's not about policing me. You can actually educate me on why I need to do the thing you're asking, and you're helping me along the way. So I think giving the staff the means to do what you're doing is also important, because the city of San Jose and a couple other larger domains that I've dealt with, they're so overstaffed. They don't have the time to answer the calls. They don't have the time to get out there in a timely fashion and deal with maybe the homeowner who originally took the tree out. Maybe it's a renter now because it's been 6 or 8 months, and you're not even dealing with the same person who had the issue in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, giving staff like yourself the need, the means to do the thing you have to do is really important.
I try very hard to make time for the phone calls of someone who calls and says, I'm having a problem with my tree. If I could spend 10 minutes on the phone with someone and help them solve that problem so that, that tree, can persist in that area, I mean, that was worth my 10 minutes. But that means the person already cares about their tree. And so I'm already like 75% of the way there.
Yeah. Yes, very true. Well, I think this is a lot of really good information for cities that want to up their game with their urban forests or with their WUI policies. So I really appreciate you sharing what you have established there and what you've been maintaining with the city of Saratoga. And thank you for taking the time to share.
Thank you.